there were people I usually wouldn't talk to or wouldn't usually have the opportunity to talk to. So I liked how I challenged myself doing that. And then this week was super snowy, like we all know. And so usually I just run to go into my school and not get snow on my hair, get my hair ruined. So I made it a goal to at least hold the door for the next person behind me, and I just smile and say hi at them. And then this week for Young Women's in my ward, we made cookies for people. So we dropped them off at some of the widows in my ward and some of the girls in my ward who in my neighborhood who we haven't seen in a while. So we just wrote notes to them. So those were my 3 acts of service.
Awesome. I love it. I hope that each of you experience the joy and connection that comes from reaching out of yourself. And we're going to learn from Tyler what that can do as you try to build community and lead. And Kristen, we'll turn the time over to you.
I love that, Caroline. And I love small and simple things, right? It's hardly ever big, huge stuff, but that small and simple stuff that makes up our life and makes up, whether things are going well or bad, and we definitely have control of that. So I am so excited to have Tyler here. He has become a dear friend of mine. He is a principal of a school called Roots Charter High School. If you've never heard about it, it's a farm-based high school. And it's so cool, you guys. They plant flowers and they have llamas and pigs and you name it. And then they also have the most awesome culture at their school. Tyler has created an incredible experience for these kids who sometimes don't feel comfortable in another school, or they kind of want something that has a little bit more love and compassion and acceptance. A lot of schools are just big and you kind of maybe sometimes feel lost and you feel like you don't belong there. And Tyler has created an environment at Roots where everyone belongs and everyone is loved and accepted and finds their people, which I think that connection in life is what we all crave, right? When things are not going great, we need someone there that loves us. And Tyler has created this soft place to fall, this really safe haven that we don't see at schools. Like, it's unlike any school you have ever been a part of or been in. So we are so excited for him to share just a glimpse of what he does at Roots, because we would love you to take a little bit of Roots, a little bit of Tyler into your school. We all need a Roots school in our own. And so if you guys, and you can, I believe you can, lead out in a way of what Tyler will talk about, how he does things in your own way, we can truly be that change and that love and that safe haven. So Tyler, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. That was like the best introduction I think I've ever received. So thank you for that. I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm not super savvy on the Google side of this, so let me make sure I do this right. Let's see there. Uh-oh, I'm ruining the... Okay, you guys, can you see? Can you see that, Kristen and everybody? Okay. We should have. You still seeing it?
We see it's kind of like your screen is to the side. There's Homer Simpson, love to lead. Does that sound right?
This is like the worst. I'm like ruining it. Yeah, you can just give me. Okay, let me see how. So when I go. Let me try.
No longer sharing, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay, it looks right.
Can you see that?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, that was stressful, and I kind of ruined some of the fun of this. But I'm Tyler Bastian, so I'm the. Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
It's the weirdest thing on this because I can't see anybody. So when I do this, all I see is my screen. I'm Tyler Bastian. So as Kristen said, I'm the director of Roots Charter High School. It's definitely, as Kristen said, it's a different place. Has a different feel than most schools. I wanted to share this picture. So this is me. Every Halloween, I try to dress up. And I was going for kind of a look of, I was trying to actually be Kip from Napoleon Dynamite. I got to school and no one saw me as Kip. They saw me as Ned Flanders. And this, I want you to think of this story. What I was trying to be and what I was actually viewed as was very different. I want to start out, share, this is Wolf. If you had gone to Roots, you'd know Wolf is not his real name. And he did wear that mask quite often, as he's wearing it right there. But Wolf came to us, and definitely when I first met Wolf, I thought of this quote. This quote, the wrong ideas taken root in the world, and the idea is this: there just might be some lives out there that matter less than other lives. One thing that we dealt with Wolf was really, he had kind of a toxic sense of not valuing or not being valued. An example of this is one day, the art teacher, he could definitely get under your skin, but the art teacher came to me one day and said, Wolf wants to draw you. And I was like, that's fine, he can draw me. And the problem we had was that was more the drawing, and the drawing that he'd come up with was this. And I don't know if you can see this. It was a wood relief, but he had drawn me with some pretty sharp teeth. And I said, I looked at that and I thought, that is one of the best portraits I've ever seen of me. Let's actually let's allow him to draw it, and let's use it as my yearbook picture. So this was the yearbook picture. The problem with this really ended up being that once Wolf had gotten a taste of kind of having his art in the yearbook, he wanted to continue to draw me. So this was year one. Year two got even better. That was me in my yearbook for the second year that Wolf was with us. Year three got a little bit, I don't know if his abilities were getting better or worse. And then year four, Wolf expanded his abilities into the digital arts. If you look, one kind of theme that went throughout it was the teeth. I don't know why Wolf thought that I needed these sharp teeth and these red eyes, but that's what he gave me. We always are telling stories, and the stories we tell really matter, and the stories we tell change how people feel and change how we experience life. I always say life is a story factory. One problem with life being a story factory is that we don't take enough time to really ask ourselves, are we telling quality stories? Are we looking for quality stories? Or when we see things, are we making them a quality experience? We don't control, or we don't try to control often the stories that we tell. This idea of controlling the story that you tell, I think is super important, because everything you experience, you take it in and you get to tell yourself, or you get to control what that experience or what that story means. One day I got to work and I was having a bad morning. I get to work and a student had taken this rock out of the science department. He'd taken the labeler out of the desk of one of the front office ladies, and then he took a roll of tape and he created Chris Rock. I had the option at this moment to get frustrated because he kind of stolen from multiple people to create Chris Rock, or I could just enjoy the fact that I got to get to work and see Chris Rock. That was the first thing I saw was Chris Rock, and really defining and saying, what kind of story do we want to create? And for me, it's really about love. Am I taking these stories and am I centering them and making sure that these stories are based on and created in love? Martin Luther King said, love is creative and redemptive. And I want you to think about that. Love builds up and unites. Hate tears down and destroys. The aftermath of fight with fire or war, is as we often call it, that method is bitterness and chaos. The aftermath of love, the love method is reconciliation, the creation of the beloved community. As we think about this, Martin Luther King, he kind of really would push, if you read a lot of his stuff, this idea of a beloved community. And I think as you guys go out, and as we all go out, you as youth are probably some of the most powerful people out there to create what Martin Luther King envisioned as this beloved community. I want to talk a minute about the other idea of war. War for me, really, when I present this, war is an acronym, and what war stands for is we are right. And the problem is we go into so many situations and we automatically think, okay, we are right. The problem often is, and one of the solutions to this idea of war is if we start to go into situations and we ask ourselves, what if we are wrong? I want to kind of go back to something that Caroline said. Caroline, when she was sharing her little moment, she used the word empathy, and she's talking about when you create or when you go out of your comfort zone, you start to naturally develop that empathy for other people. And part of that is understanding that a lot of the stories we've told and the stories we've made up in our head, those stories are wrong. And that idea of asking yourself, what if I'm wrong, or what if we're wrong, really opens us up to kind of pop that bubble that we find ourselves in, and then to start to exercise some empathy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my story, and I'm going to get a little vulnerable with you guys, if that's okay. This is me. Oh, first off, when I was your age, I was full of fear. Everything I did, not everything, but the majority of what I did was based on fear. I was afraid of what people would think of me, afraid of failure, afraid of trying. And this is me my senior year. What's funny is my whole life I've been told I look like Tim Curry, which you guys are young, so I'll show you Tim Curry. That's Tim Curry when he was young. But the issue was with that picture, if you look, it looks, that senior year looking back now would be me, or Tim Curry if he had a baby with Zoolander would give you what I was my senior year. And I was incredibly insecure and I was incredibly fearful. This picture, to me, I'll be totally honest with you, it holds a lot of stress and a lot of pain. Like even when I see it, when I find it in the basement or something, I pulled it out to do this presentation. It's hard for me to visually and mentally go back to some of those feelings that I had. When I was 19, I moved to Honduras for 2 years. And while I was there, and I want to tell you this quick story, I met a guy named Augustine. And Augustine was someone that we kind of just knocked on his door, and he became pretty much a savior to me and a lifesaver to me, because he taught me something that I so desperately needed. And that was that he taught me one day, we were just sitting there and he said, you know, you can pick your problems in life. And I remember even thinking like, what is he talking about? And he said this, he says, your energy, focus, and purpose will always flow to the problem that you choose. And this, for me, being, 20-year-old, hearing him teach this and hearing him and me starting to kind of contemplate what this meant completely changed the story that I began to tell myself. It changed who I wanted to be. It's how I started to lead. And fast forward to 2015, I decided that my problem in 2015, at least in life, was going to be Roots Charter High School. So we opened Roots Charter High School in 2015. It wasn't what I expected. And if you've ever heard me speak, it was like getting punched in the head. And I felt punch drunk for that first year. So many things, little things happened that I couldn't have predicted or couldn't have even understood or imagined. One of them, one day I was sitting in my office, just kind of getting ready to eat my lunch. This is a burrito. And a teacher walks in, and I can tell this teacher is super mad. And she has a student with her. And she just kind of throws the student into my office and says, he swore at me. He told me to F off. And this puts him in my office. And I'm going in my head, I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to do? What do principals do with kids like this? So I sit him in front of me and I start talking to him like, here, you can't do that, you can't. And the whole time I'm talking to him, he is just staring at this burrito that's in front of me. And finally, my heart catches up with my head and my mouth, and I say, hey, buddy, are you hungry? And tears well up in his eyes. Here's this big, tough kid. he tears up and he says, "I'm so hungry," and starts to talk about the fact that he hasn't eaten since the day, since basically the day before at lunch when he was at school. And so I cut my burrito in half. I gave him half, and I eat half. And for me, this moment was transformative for me. And I started to realize, kind of, as I said before, it's that popping of the bubble that you live in, and realizing like there's people outside of me whose stories are super, super different. I was telling myself the story that this kid was just obnoxious, this kid was just a brat, and he's out there telling teachers, to F off, when the reality was he was a hungry kid that was scared, that needed a lunch. And to sit there and eat that burrito with him, I think I probably cried, not a little bit, we laughed a little bit, but I remember when he left my office just breaking down and just bawling and just so frustrated that I had repeatedly told this story. From 2015, I'll tell another story. From 2015 to 2017, we were having a huge problem, and we were averaging about 7 suicide attempts per school year, meaning that 7 students were self-harming with the intent to end their life. And it got to the point where we were like, we can't do this. Like, I can't, mentally and emotionally, I can't do this anymore. And what we really realized is that they completely lacked hope. And it's a matter of saying, how do we tell them a story? How do we create hope in their life? And I went back to another quote that I love from Martin Luther King. And he said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality." And as I was reading it, that unconditional love is something that just jumped out at me, and thinking, how is that the key to hope? And then I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. I was reminded, and I started to lean on some of his philosophy. And Mr. Rogers had a number that was 143. He said it takes one letter to say I, 4 letters to say love, and 3 letters to say you. And when this was the story that I wanted to start telling, we tweaked the number a little bit to 243, which means it takes 2 letters to say we, 4 letters to say love, and 3 letters to say you. So I went into the school that summer and I spray painted 243 everywhere. I wanted the students, we wanted the students to, when they got there, to just see it and know that anywhere they looked, they could know that they were loved and that love was there. And the fascinating thing about this is, through that little number from 2018, and that was the biggest shift that we had. That was the biggest thing we introduced. And from 2018 to 2022, we had 2 suicide attempts, meaning we only had 2 students when we averaged 7. We only had 2 now. 2 is still a lot, but 2 who self-harmed with the intent to end their life. The fascinating thing is that our hospitalization rate stayed the same. But what we created is a situation that when a student was in a place where they wanted to end their life, they found an adult. That 243, and having that on their mind and seeing that idea and that concept of love everywhere really created a scenario where they knew that they could come to any adult in that building. They could say, "Hey, I need help." We had a student who spoke at our 2018 graduation, and she said, fascinating story with her, that she shared in her graduation speech. But in her speech, she said, "At my lowest point, I looked up and I saw 243. I called for help and help came." I can't even really read that quote without tearing up, but that is what loving leadership does. It creates a scenario where people know that they can call for help and they can lean on each other, and that person will be there for them. So again, if you're alive, you're creating stories. Every single day, you're surrounded by stories and you're creating stories. And the question you have to start to ask yourselves is, what story do I want to create? What do I want to make? What do I want to create in this life? Brene Brown, I could go on all day about her and her writings, but she said, "A deep sense of love and belonging is irreducible need of all people. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong." As we go into the world, and as you guys go out into the world and are leading, taking this and understanding that is the most important thing. let me jump forward. These stories that I told, I want to kind of go back as we think about Wolf and think about who he was, and understand that all really the Wolf hoped for was a place in a community. He wanted to find a place where he could land and he could know that he was seen, that he was heard, and that he mattered. As you think about that burrito story, we really have to be telling the story that our behaviors are more of an indication of what that person is experiencing and feeling, and the stories and the behaviors that others have are not a definition of what that person is. We all hope to be seen not as the sum of our worst behaviors, but unfortunately we often are. Augustine in his story really teaches us that you can pick your problems and don't let those problems pick you. And we have to hope for a future that we have the power to make. And then 243 is that idea that we all have to be able to hope that we'll be loved and that we can find love in the communities that we visit. I want to end with this. As you go out and you start to lead and you start to try to make a difference in the world, I want you to convert the definition or the word lead into an acronym as well. And lead, for me, when I think of how to lead stands for love everyone authentically and deliberately. If you really want to be a leader in your community or in everywhere you go, that loving everyone is the best way to lead. If everyone knows that you love them, and it's authentic, and you're deliberate about how you interact with people and about how you love them, that is to me, and that is true leadership. And as you start to think about how do I get to where I truly love everyone, that's how you'll truly become a leader. Here are some immediate change things that we can go through. I want to focus on one of these that I think is very, very important as you're starting to go out into the world. And that's actually that last one, listening with curiosity. So often we listen to others and we already have a story in our head and we're not curious anymore. But as we start to listen to other people with that curiosity to think, what if what they're saying is right, and what if I've been wrong? And that curiosity of wonder really helps us to open up to others and open up to the possibility that we can, that you can change and that you can help others change. I'm gonna stop sharing. And then just in closing, I don't get as much opportunity now that I'm a principal to talk to young kids. Even hearing you talk, Caroline, was so exciting to just the energy. I don't love adults, no offense to all the adults on the call. I love kids. I love your hopefulness, the way you guys view the world. And hearing you talk, Caroline, really gives me that hope that things are going to change. Right now at my screen, I'm looking and I'm seeing right in the middle of my screen I see Megan. And I think Megan is a perfect example. She's one of my students, so I can pick on her a little bit. Megan is a great example of what a leader can be, that humility and that kindness. And so the final thing, I know I keep saying that like the final thing, but truly the final thing I want to leave all of you with is the fact that you don't need to be afraid of the world. You don't need to be afraid of what's going on, because you guys have so much power to make a difference. And I would love for you guys to practice having that fearless heart and leading with love. And as you do that, you'll start to see that everything works out, and it works out amazing, especially if you use love and you lead out with that love. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. I wish I was more familiar with Google Chat or Google
Awesome.
So incredible.
The thing I hated is I went into presentation mode and I didn't get to see any of the kids' faces. So,
I know. Shoot.
They're really
thank you. I think we have 2 minutes I don't know if there's any thoughts or questions, or Jane, were you trying to say something? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say you gave us so much to think about, Tyler. You're just knowing, I know Tyler, he doesn't really know me, but I've been following what he's done for years now. And he practices what he preaches, and leading with love can accomplish so much good in a community. And watching what he's done by leading with love 243 is truly miraculous. And I love the challenge for each of us as student ambassadors and as adults to lead with love, because good will always come as you listen with curiosity, lead with love. And I just really appreciate those tips. I hope as you guys go about this month that you'll think about the task to just do small and simple acts. And as you do that, you'll feel joy in your heart, and you will build relationships in your schools, in your communities, with strangers, and you'll feel this desire build upon itself to continue to do good. And we're going to need this as we do teen centers in our schools. We need to create a community of acceptance, of love, with strangers, with people you've never talked to in your schools. And we know that as you lead with love and with kindness, we're going to be able to create a community within your school where everyone will feel comfortable to come to these teen centers. It really, really, you are absolutely part of this process, and we need you. And we're going to just leave that thought with you, that we're so glad you're here, and we hope you have a great month, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, Happy holidays. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you so